Paper Games began as a small internet co-op in 2012. Founder Yao Runhao posted ads on forums to build a team that never even met in person, hoping their first game would earn enough for everyone to take a holiday. A decade later, that hobby project had become a multi-billion-dollar company fighting for its life. Between July 2021 and April 2022, China stopped issuing game licenses entirely. For 8 months, there were 0 domestic approvals. The financial bleeding was immediate. Paper Games was forced to cut 75% of some teams, sending projects that had been in development for years back to the demo stage. The crisis was so severe that Yao stepped back from his role as CEO and returned to production. He personally spent his days writing dialogue for Love Nikki, a 7-year-old dress-up game, just to protect the company's remaining revenue base and make payroll. At the 2024 company New Year party, the team was asked to make a wish. They didn't wish to dominate the industry. They wrote down, "Everyone survives." For them, the stakes were about staving off extinction rather than market share. While the studio was struggling to stay afloat, they were secretly banking their entire future on a 3D romance game with action combat called Love and Deepspace. When they revealed the vertical slice in October 2020, the reaction was brutal. Target romance players rejected the combat, while action players mocked the graphics, calling the visuals laughable. The April 2023 beta was just as damaging. Players criticized the models as jarring and stiff, noting that the combat felt like a pointless appendage. Standard industry practice is to lower ambition and cut features to ship a project faster when a vertical slice fails. Paper Games flatly refused to compromise. They pivoted to a mandate they called fidelity before feasibility. The plan was to build characters to impossible console game specifications first, and force the engineering team to make them run on a mobile phone second. The mandate required pushing character models to 100,000 polygons and over 500 bones, on hardware that shouldn't have been able to process those numbers. They moved past off-the-shelf software, licensing Unity's source code and gutting the engine's foundations to write a proprietary render pipeline. When standard math libraries weren't fast enough, the engineers hand-wrote raw ARM assembly language to squeeze every possible cycle out of the hardware. They used that assembly code to vectorize dot products, performing manual math calculations, purely so a character's skirt would move correctly at 60 frames a second. This massive engineering effort existed for one reason. The game's camera lives 30 centimeters away from a semi-realistic face. The engine had to be rebuilt to survive that proximity. They developed a proprietary blush algorithm with independent control for the face, ears, and nose. Pre-computed curves determine the specific propagation of embarrassment. Sometimes it's an ear-first spread, other times the whole face reddens at once. To maintain the illusion, they built a dedicated close-up shadow map. It tethers a geometric sphere to a character's bone, ensuring the lighting is always curated so their face is never accidentally unlit. The physics solver simulates 2,000 independent bone particles across hair and cloth. It's so precise that animators can override the simulation frame by frame to ensure a movement lands the exact emotional beat they intended. This control is used for microscopic details, like the 2-frame flashes of surprise in a character's eyes during high-stakes narrative moments. These details function as psychological triggers, engineered at the atomic level to simulate genuine human presence. The technical director summarized the real product of these 6 years as the creation of a factory, a system built to produce high-volume narrative content at an industrial scale. They answered the 2023 beta's criticisms by spending 2 years scanning 30 different voice actors. They use that data to train a proprietary neural network that generates accurate lip syncing for 4 different languages. On the motion capture floor, cameras record at 300 frames per second. The system captures actual muscle simulation and the way flesh deforms under movement, rather than just tracking joint markers. They successfully built a cinematic infrastructure that ingests raw human performance and outputs scalable, predictable romance. Love and Deepspace launched in January 2024 to tens of millions of players, generating over $1 billion in revenue and effectively ending the studio's era of financial uncertainty. The launch triggered an explosive real-world response. For the 80 million player milestone, the studio built a 270-degree immersive pop-up in Manhattan with heat-reactive displays. For the first anniversary, character letters were sent to players from the world's oldest working post office in Sanquhar, Scotland. Simultaneously, a campaign launched from the Arctic Circle in Finnish Lapland, complete with official tourism board endorsements for the fictional couples. The developers' obsessive attention to detail directly infected the fanbase, manifesting a digital relationship into a tangible, high-spending real-world economy. The community's devotion is so intense that a recent character controversy resulted in fans spontaneously raising nearly $30,000 for real-world wolf conservation in just days. Yet for a game that is almost entirely writing, no head writer has ever been publicly named. After 2.5 years, not one English voice actor has been credited. The massive engineering and AI projects were expensive, but the tools doing the emotional heavy lifting, gaze duration and deliberate silence, cost the studio nothing. Paper Games proved that betting a dying company on microscopic, unfeasible details is exactly how you build a billion-dollar empire. They lived by the company motto, "It could also be like this."